Thanks for joining today. This will be, and I'll say this every time I do one of these presentation, these monthlies. This will probably be my favorite or one of because I have over the last 25 years spent so much time talking with families about or individuals or couples preparing themselves for what's going to be left to children, to their kids and grandkids, as well as talking to um, individuals and couples about their parents. So I think a lot of what we do with financial planning, with planning in general, is to make sure that to take stress, this is a lot of these presentations I talk about this, is to take stress off of people or reduce it as much as possible. And there is the obviously the one event or two events, I guess, that cause the most stress when we all think about it is one, what happens when we age and possibly have a health event, become disabled, or maybe it's Alzheimer's, dementia, those types of things. What will our family do, our children do, our adult children probably at that time, as well as when we pass away. What we're all gonna that's inevitable. It's 100% going to happen. So if we pass away, then what is did we leave clarity for our families? Did we organize things for them? Did we leave a mess? And I'll spend a little time talking about that. So, good news for you, those who are on the call live. This is one of the shorter ones. I kept this short, so just some high level information. And obviously, if you want more, please send me a message. There's plenty that I can talk about with this and to help guide people in doing these types of things. So, um, this is obviously recorded again and it will be posted to our YouTube channel. Feel free if you have to jump off and watch, catch up on what you maybe missed, share it with others. I think when I looked at our YouTube channel for our other presentations, we have a handful of people who come on live. I know 4 o'clock on whatever day of the week. Usually Tuesdays is tough for some people, but we usually get a good number of folks that go on and watch the videos on the recording. So that's great. The key thing I always look at with this and a lot of things, because I have children too, is I never want to leave. I never want to leave behind a mess for my kids. I never want them to have to take care of me. So if I can do, or myself and my wife, if I can do all the things possible while I'm able to make sure that that is not a problem, then I'm happier just knowing that. I'm happier as I age, just being able to say my kids are going to be fine when something happens to us because we've taken care of the things we need to. And it's not just all finances, but we've taken care of the things we need to protect them and their stress levels. So with that, let's jump in. There's going to be three key areas that I'm going to highlight on this call today. One's organization, and I'll talk a little. We'll cover some more details on that. I did a Zoom on that recently. Two is estate plan or estate planning. We'll go a little bit into that. There may be another Zoom later. It's going to go deeper on certain aspects of estate planning, but this is related more of us when we're older, our parents when they're older, as far as getting ready for end of life, if you will. And then fourth is the family talk. Which is absolutely one of my favorite things to get involved with that it does have something to do with money. I should not say that or finances, but it's one of when a family asks me to be part of that conversation with their family, it is the most rewarding thing I probably do in my career. So let's start with organization. We did a video back in February. Some of you may have seen that. If not, it will actually help you maybe with this one to go back at some point and look at the February video because I go a lot more into just being organized as an individual or a couple in your household. So that YouTube video is there from February. What we want to talk with families about is just simplifying things. So it's making sure when we say organization is that I talk about the mess. We don't want to leave things that our family has that confuses them. I'll give you a prime example of that. So in the February YouTube recording, or Zoom meeting, we talked a lot about getting rid of old documents that you don't need, or making sure that the documents that you do need to keep over time are stored correctly and have easy access. Because what I don't want to have happen is someone's child or grandchild who's helping sort through things finds old out of date documents and they're not sure if they're valid or not. It could be an old will, and I've talked in estate planning covers some of that. It could be an old life insurance policy. It could be things that just aren't active anymore, really don't need to be there, but we are in that case that family had a trouble had that trouble they had trouble throwing things away. They pack ratted things together, and that just causes a lot of confusion. Gosh, we sure don't want two or three old wills sitting around where people have to debate which ones. I know it should be the most recent dated, but they would be. This just happened not that long ago. Someone passed, and there were two wills they found, and the newest will was probably 13, 14 years old. So they worried there's another one somewhere, and they looked everywhere to make sure that mom didn't have another will somewhere that because she kept the old one, they just figured she may just keep them all, and there may be another one. So the stress level they have for that was unbelievable. So with all that we're talking about with organization, whether it's destroying documents, organizing things, and consolidating accounts, as we get older, we do tell clients there is really no reason to have two or three or four banks out there that people are doing business with, that they have accounts with. There's no reason to have two or three different investment firms. It's time at some point in age to begin to take all these accounts and start bringing them in-house together somewhere, or at least one or two places, not scattered around five or six or more. We see a lot more than that. Just so they're, because again, if they're scattered in different organizations, in different firms or institutions, guess what the family has to do? They got to get death certificates for each one of those institutions. They've got to get ledger testamentaries for each one of those institutions. They got to go around to every single one of them on your behalf and make and transfer accounts of ownership or close them or do all that types of things. And if you ever have served as executor before for someone and had to take care of this, it is ungodly, time consuming stress. Most of us who serve as executor at some point, we probably have jobs, so it's taken away from our work, it's taken away from our families, it's costing us money, and it is so stressful. So consolidation of things are huge. Part of organization is what I talk about with people, particularly when we get to this part of their lives or their parents' part of their lives, is making sure that things like heirlooms and collectibles are sorted and organized. So if most of us have something or some things that we have accumulated over time that it maybe came from maybe it's generational, it came from our parents or our grandparents or our great grandparents that stayed in the family for a while, or maybe it's things that we've purchased or acquired that we feel has a lot of value, and maybe one of the children or two or some or our grandchildren really finds value in that too. At that point in our lives, we want to make sure that we have listed what they are. They're not just in a shop somewhere, or they're not in a, I mean, I have things in a room, a collectible room that that are pretty sorted pretty well actually, and I kind of know when we know what the kids would want to keep and what they don't want to keep, but that knowing that direction of things and having that list to say this child gets these things, this grandchild gets these things, and this goes into the family talk in a minute. You do talk to your children, your grandchildren about those types of things too, to make sure that they want to have those. I mean, I've had it where families will walk their or let their children or grandchildren kind of walk the house and start writing down what they would love to have. And at the end of the day, the parents will say, oh, they don't want these pictures. They don't want that furniture. They don't want these types of things. We thought they might, and they really don't. They don't want the book collection. They want this or that. So that gives them a way they can say, all right, is it, and it may not be time yet, but is it time to donate some things that you don't use? So we've been through this where a family will maybe they have a couple of spare rooms with some furniture in it that really is not being the rooms are not going to be utilized or those types of things, and they'll go ahead and start donating furniture or have their own estate sale. Instead of waiting for the again, most of us have probably been through an estate sale before facilitating one. Most of us probably definitely been to one. just to buy some, see if they want to buy something. But if I've actually enjoyed it when I've helped someone or seen someone or tended an estate. So when it's the actual person's estate, they're doing it themselves. They're not having their children do it for them. So they're getting rid of some things before they even pass on, which they enjoy, and not for the obviously not making a lot of probably money doing that. That's not the point, is to say that they know that this, whatever it is, it's a lamp that nobody in the family cares about, that it went to someone who loves it. And to see that they love that, it meant a lot. And I promise you, if you're doing this for your parents, it can be a good conversation to have. And we've seen some good results from that. So again, if you pull that February YouTube video, you may get a little more information on the organization piece. And again, I'm happy to go through any of these things that we did. I've got a ton of stories. The one thing I do have more than anything is a lot of stories. So I've got stories on every single one of these, is how they worked and how they benefit a family participating. The next thing I want to talk about for a few minutes is estate plans, or estate planning. So, what we definitely want to do with our parents or ourselves, if we're in that, again, in that later retirement age, is we want to double check everything. I mentioned a second ago with organization about somebody, a real story, had a couple of wills already, and the family was worried about them having another one parked somewhere they can't find. But we want to work with our parents or ourselves if we're the parents to go through what's transfer on death. I'm using acronyms here, so I'm going to explain those. What's transfer of death on accounts? Do any checking accounts need to be transfer of death? And you're not making somebody else an owner. You're just basically putting a beneficiary on a normal taxable account, a normal checking or CD or bank account. What's payable on death? It's the same really thing. So if you hear TOD, POD in any type of financial institution, they're very similar to one another. Is there anything joint with husband, wife, that maybe the husband's already passed, the dad's passed, or the wife's already passed, or maybe they want to have things they want to make you joint on already? That's gifting, right? So you're actually gifting at that point. But that could be something that we've worked with several times for people to do that. PII is permission to disclose information. So, for example, my firm, if you work with us, we may have a PII form, a permission form, to be able to share data. It's not a form to let people, and they can execute some things, but they can't do a lot. You still have control of that. We need a power of attorney to give them full access to things, but it allows us in case we use them for CPAs and attorneys, but we also use them for their children or somebody else in the family they trust. Maybe it's a friend who's going to work with them on some of their financials if something bad happened to them, sick, disabled, or pass away. So we want that permission form done. Just some things to think about as far as estate plans, getting your affairs ready for disability and death at some point. I would definitely say we want to get all assets and liabilities organized. Everything, it goes back to the organization page, but we want anything that you own needs to be listed somewhere. That's the consolidation again of accounts from different organizations, more, to one or two instead of, four or five or six. But you want to have everything listed really well. I know dollar figures change all the time with money coming in, money coming out, but you need to have that for your family. They need to have a personal financial statement, net worth statement, balance sheet, whatever you want to call it, one form or those or the other, of a list of everything that you have, as well as where it is, obviously. And if you have some expert or professional, a banker, a financial planner like us, an insurance agent that you've worked with your whole life, you want to have that information for that person listed too, so they have a phone number they can call. Again, email, phone number with that name and firm, so that your family, once they get a hold of those assets, that they're going to be able to reach out to those people as well to make this as seamless as possible for them. And again, we would want to talk about this before you pass away or become sick or disabled, which we'll cover in the next slide. Anything that you pay in a bill, it needs to be listed. I mean, that's one thing we prefer, auto pay. I mentioned that in the Zoom presentation before, just so things are continue to be paid as needed to be, but that has to be listed somewhere. So, your child can call up the whatever services they are, and they got to have permission to do this, by the way. but can call up these services and say, we need to cut off the water. Nobody's living there right now. Mom's passed away. We need to cut off the power. We need to put a temporary on something else, gas, maybe delivery or that kind of thing, natural gas, I mean, propane gas. So having a list of all bills being paid is very, very important, as well as your income sources. So when does Social Security pay in, pensions pay in, what accounts are they paid to, how much are they? We need to make sure that your family has these types of things in some order that's in a maybe it's in a notebook, maybe it's in a notebook's great. Maybe it's on a computer maybe it's on your computer in a document, Word file or PDF file or something that they can pull off of, or maybe just share it with them every once in a while, which again, I love that. The more information we can share with our family as we age, the better off they and we, if we are again sick and disabled, particularly we're still here, the better off we're going to be. They need to know this stuff. So with wills or estate documents, make sure that you look at those. And this is everybody. This doesn't matter if you're 90 years old or you're 35 years old. You need to look at these documents every, say, 3 to 5 years. Life changes. If you do make an update to a document, destroy an old one. Do not keep an old one at all anywhere. There's no point of having it. Make sure that anybody who's executor or agent on your power of attorney or health directives, they need copies. This is not where they need to find them one day after the fact. As soon as you execute or you verify that what you've done years ago is still valid and you want to keep those instructions the way they are, you need to send or make sure that the executor, again, it's usually an adult child or maybe an adult grandchild in some cases or a friend, they have copies of these things. They have to. If you're working with someone like us, make sure we get copies. We digitally store them and we have them accessible to people who need them when they need them. So we can help you with that too. Check your beneficiaries on anything you have beneficiary on. They change. Children, unfortunately, adult children, as we age, they may pass early, and we want to make sure the beneficiaries are correct, and we want to make sure if you have, if you've added grandchildren to the family and you want to put them as beneficiaries on that, we just want to 100% every few years when you check your will and your power of attorneys and health directives that they're valid and good. That's the same exact time to check your beneficiaries. You may want to do it a little bit more often. We kind of coach people to do a little bit more often, but you may want to check to make sure that that your assets are going to go to the right people. Okay. And we'll review that with you, and others can review it with you too, just to clarify that everything's going to be buttoned up really well. And the last thing I want to mention on the state plans is gifting strategies. I mean, that's a time when we want to talk to families about. I mean, there are a lot of, again, when we pass away, our affairs, our net worth, our assets go to our family or charities or friends. We know that's too, but they go to someone else, right? So, but there may be a time while we're living to do that as well, and that's not always money. That kind of goes back to organization too. One of the most enjoyable things that that a grandparent can do with a grandchild is to actually, if they want to give them things that maybe the grandchild would appreciate, or it could be a son or daughter too, but something they would appreciate before they pass. I mean, God, it's a collection. My grandfather's marble collection he had since 1915 or whatever that was. His military banners when in the Navy, just his bad, that was just something cool him and I did together when we were, sitting in his lap, 5 or 6 years old, and quiz him on the Navy, and he'd show me his patches and his little medals and all that. And it was just so neat to see that. But him being able to give that before he passed away, and the thrill of being able to share that, it meant so much. And I've seen that so many times with people who can actually, it helps with organization, it helps with estate planning, and it also helps what we'll talk about in a minute is the family talk. So gifting strategies aren't just giving money or helping charities and that types of things. It's also looking around your possessions and just saying, I'm gonna clean my clutter a little bit with things that I want to pass on to my family that I think they would appreciate at this time and keep forever. And just sharing those stories and memories is so special. The last thing that I want to mention real quick is to go over what's called the other talk. So how I got that title is not, I stole it. This is a book that I forgot how old this book is now. Put reading glasses on it. It's at least 15 years old. AARP. No, yeah, I guess now I do qualify for AARP. But I had this book I probably got this book at least 10 or 12 years ago, and I've just reread it again. I think I put a reread every 2 years. The other talk is why it's titled this way. It is the two most important talks a family can have together. One is the birds and the bees. That's one of the tough ones. We've probably all been there at some point. I remember it, and it's very uncomfortable. The next most important talk, which is also uncomfortable, is talking with your parents or your parents talking to you about the end of their life. It's just tough. I mean, nobody wants to accept what's going to happen. It is going to happen, but there's things that we need to be discussing as in communicating with each other that I think is just, oh gosh, it takes the stress out of so much. It just does. I mentioned that so many times about stress. But I mean, you look at some of these questions on here and just pick out, several things that you go, wow, I didn't know talk about that. We talk about this. A big one for me, this one is the keys. So we've been involved with so many conversations. Let me say this. When I have permission to talk to someone's kids, a client's kids, I've had a client leave my office who's a little bit older in age, and I've watched them leave and have a hard time driving out of the parking lot. And I will call. I've had conversations with their children going, I'm scared to death that Bob's fictitious. I'm scared to death that Bob he's struggling a little bit behind the wheel. Have you talked to him about that yet, or has he talked to you about that? And more than likely, I would talk to Bob and myself and say, you need to at some point talk about the giving up the keys. A cheat sheet on that one that's worked so well in my career with clients is that when before they get to the point to ever do that, we may have just a small, it's just maybe one of the days we're meeting and it's not like to talk about with other things. And I'll just say, hey, have you ever thought about this? And what would cause you if you to say, I'm willing to park my keys and give those away? I just can't drive anymore. I'm putting my life or other people's lives in danger. And they usually write a letter to their family. We'll have them write a letter to their family saying, if these certain things occur with me, I am willing to give the keys up. And they give that to their family, their kids. If that happens, those things start to happen. The kids or themselves can look at that letter they wrote and signed, maybe it's 10 years ago, and it's an easier decision by them because they're the ones who took the power to agree to it before. So they're not fighting it as much when that time comes. It's a struggle when we have that conversation with people. Another thing and there's a lot of things we can cover on here, and I'm happy to talk about any of these. Another one I think people forget about is pets. We just had this one. So who takes care of, maybe your mom and dad, or maybe you do in an older life, have a dog or a cat or a bird or anything. Who's going to in the family is going to take care of the animals when something happens to you. That's just part of a conversation. So the other talk, all it is a family discussion. It is basically a question and answer session and there's no animosity. It's designed not to be. There shouldn't be animosity. There shouldn't be hard feelings. There just should be a real life conversation about if I get sick one day or disabled, do I want to go in a nursing home or not? That's part of the conversation. Where would I live if I had Alzheimer's? Should we already go tour facilities before that ever happens to make sure that I pick something that's because I won't be able to do it when that happens to me. You're going to have to make the choice for me. If I've already done it, we've covered that. It takes a stress off of you. Prepaying for funeral expenses, those types of things are huge. So there's so many things involved with that. So when we get involved with it, or I do, it's actually, I become a facilitator. So it's almost I help with the questions because people forget what questions to ask mom and dad, or mom and dad ask their kids. And then if they say we're stuck on how to address this as a family, we share stories, or I share stories about what I've seen in the past with other families and how this can work to benefit them. And again, there are, like I said, I've got a lot of them. So there's so many that we can go through. And a lot of times this isn't just a one-time meeting. I just had this yesterday with a new client's family. So, and it was, I mean, sometimes it felt a little uncomfortable for the parents, as well as the parents are 85, 83, as well as the adult children who are in their 60s. But they see the reason why they want to talk about these types of things, because again, the patriarch and matriarch of the family at the very end of all this, they still feel what I said at the very beginning of this conversation today is that they don't want to cause undue stress on their children. They do not want to leave behind a mess for their children. What do we need to do? What questions need to be answered? What conversations need to be had to make sure that does not occur? And that's the reason this Zoom here was one of the most enjoyable things that I can discuss when I work with a family. Just to with all the other things that's out there, um, things like this, again, we can control it. We can put things in place, and we can make sure that older couples, their adult children, and even their adult grandchildren, in many cases, they're a lot of times they're in their 30s. That we've addressed things that will again remove stress of their lives and make them happier. So with that, I'm going to end it. I got a little chatty. That was a little longer than I thought, so sorry about that. But I do get emotional with this one because I do believe in it so much. I think it's powerful. So if you need anything from me, if you want to ask questions to me or anybody on my team at Highland Trust Partners, reach out, and if we can help you with anything, we're more than happy to do so. So with that, have a wonderful day, rest of the day, and maybe we'll talk soon. Thank you so much.